Today's guest is someone who has turned her personal health journey into a mission that's transforming her community, one nutrient dense bite at a time. Kaylee is the owner and co-founder of Nourish Cafe and Market in Columbia, Missouri, a space that's become a local staple for those seeking whole, organic, and truly healing food. She lives in Columbia with her college sweetheart, Mac, and their two boys, Bo and Oaks. Kaylee's story is one of perseverance, research, and radical change. After 18 years of amenorrhea, she took her health into her own hands, diving deep into holistic wellness to balance her hormones and restore her fertility. Her journey, which was mind, body, and soul, led her to the healing power of food, reduced toxins, and holistic living. That passion ultimately gave birth to Nourish, a cafe and market rooted in the belief that food can be medicine. In today's conversation, we're exploring the role of food in healing, often overlooked superfoods, and Kaylee's personal take on alternative wellness practices like herbalism and breath work. We also look ahead, discussing the future of holistic health and what simple changes can spark big transformation. So whether you're just starting to explore holistic wellness or you're well along the path, Kaylee's insights and experience are full of encouragement and practical wisdom. So let's jump in. Kaylee, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me, Kerri. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so outside of that intro, which I love going through that because I feel all of that way about you. You're really like exhilarating to me when it comes to what it is you're working on. But I would say personally, if I come to Columbia after living there for almost 25 years, if I come to Columbia now, if I don't go to Nourish, it's because I'm there past 2:30 p.m. in the afternoon. And that's because the products that you have and the food that you serve, I just know that I can walk in and trust that I am giving my body the right stuff. And it's such a nice breath of fresh air to be able to go into a place and kind of like not worry. Now I don't have any food allergies or any of that. So I can literally just walk in and be like, all of this would be a great choice for me. And that
Mm.
is really different than most places. And so I just commend you for getting that started. And if you're in the Columbia area, I highly recommend that you go in and see her and her team at Nourish. So let's jump in and talk about kind of how you got here. What role do you believe food plays in healing and overall wellness? And how did that get you to wanting to start Nourish in the first place?
Yeah, so it all started a really long time ago when as you mentioned in the intro, I didn't have a period for 18 years. And when I was so in my late 20s, I started to dive into this idea that food made a huge difference in the way I grew up like most people. We had family dinners, but it was hamburger helper. I had graham crackers and icing for a snack. You know what I mean? Very processed food. And so I started realizing my sister actually moved out to San Diego, and visiting her, I was able to see it was just in a totally different world, green juices and all of these things. And it really opened my eyes to so different than what the Midwest had to offer for the most part. And anyway, going back to, I didn't have periods. And by the time my husband and I were looking to have kids, I realized that how much I started seeing a naturopath. I wasn't having periods. My hormone levels were post-menopausal every time we would test them. And I realized that food was going to be the first thing that we were going to delve into. And I was seeing a naturopath, functional medicine practitioner at that time. And organic whole foods was just the first, like, very basic things at that point. Of course, the journey unfolded and we really, really went deep and started to uncover a lot of issues that were going on. But that's really where it started. And once you kind of take that deep dive, it's hard. There's no turning back. Once you know how important food and toxins and all of this play into your life, you can't turn away from it, or can't ignore it, I guess I should say. And so, yeah, at that point, I was actually a pharmaceutical rep. I remember nursing my son. So I had my first son with fertility treatments. And then I was nursing him and thinking, if I'm going to leave my son every day, if I'm going to be away from him, I want to do something that I'm really, really passionate about. And and I wanted to also be closer to home. As a lot of people know that are in sales, you're traveling all day, every day out to small towns all over mid Missouri. So yeah, I don't know where it came into my brain, but I was just always And truthfully, where Nourish came into my brain, I should say, is like I said, tying that back into San Diego, going to visit, and when traveling a bit, I would always see places like this. And so I would continuously say, Columbia needs something like this. Columbia needs something like this. But I didn't have any restaurant experience, so I wasn't going to be the one to do it. And then things unfolded, and my first business partner and I met, and we both came together and founded Nourish and brought both of our expertise and our, you know, gifts, I guess you could say, to the table and open Nourish from scratch. Was that a really roundabout way of getting there? There's a lot of factors, you know.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important because a couple of things at play there. One is it's not it's not an easy fix. I mean, the process to
Mhm.
change your health is not easy. And then also the process to find your passion and then decide to make your passion a vocation is not an easy process either. Like both of those
Mhm.
take a lot of time. And the other day I was in a med spa getting a laser hair removal treatment, and the girl doing the treatment on me was like, she's 26, and she was like, I'd love to know your wellness and health routine because I looked at your chart and I see you're 42, and I'd like to know what that is. And I paused and I said, if I told you what it was, it would just sound insurmountable. I want you to understand, like, this has been a really long journey for me, and I'm not even where I know I'm going. I'm going deeper in this all of the time. And so if I wrote down everything I ingested, if I wrote down all of my practices, I think you'd just say, well, that's unrealistic for me. And I won't do that.
100%.
Like, even
Yep.
if I just walk through my morning routine, I think most people would be like, oh my gosh, but it's like been added over time and it's been a gift to me. And when you see results, that's motivating to keep going. And so I just like, I'm cautious when I share to people, here's how I got here and what I'm currently doing, because it does sound insurmountable, but it's just that little like compounding effect when it comes to health, I think. And then same thing with your
Mhm.
professional life. It's like you didn't just say, this is going to be easy. I'm going to start a restaurant
Mhm.
with no experience whatsoever.
Right.
You just had to decide, like, this is something I'm so passionate about that I'm going to make it happen. And then you do. And here you are 7 years later, and, we
Mhm.
just ran into each other last week, and it's like still not easy, right? Like you're 7 years
Yeah.
in, still not easy, but still something that you're
Mhm.
like, I'm passionate about, and this is important for me, important for my community. And I just think it's important that people hear that when you've got people who are like putting in the work, that no one's saying it's easy, but everyone's saying it's worth
Right.
it. And I'm just so glad that you've
100%.
like walked this path because it's inspired so many people.
Mhm. We're almost 9 years in, not 7.
You're almost 9 years in. I didn't realize that. For some reason, I was thinking
Hmm.
7.
Yeah. So June will be
Gosh,
nine
that's so
years.
exciting.
Wild.
Okay. So you hit that, and I'm curious, like, did you see everybody talks about that 5 year mark with a startup? Like, once you hit the 5 year mark, then the data shows that you'll be far more sustainable. So you're closer to the 10 year mark. Do you feel like 5 years was this some magical thing that you're like, oh, now I've got it figured out? Or why does the data shift so much, do you think, past that 5 year mark for an entrepreneurial perspective?
So it's hard I feel like nothing is ordinary with what we did because at 4 years, COVID happened. And then that was a couple years. So that was a very non-ordinary circumstance, in terms of the projection of a business. And then
Yeah.
in 7 years in, my business partner and I split ways, and Nourish was totally revamped at that time, and a lot of changes were made. So everything has been it's continued to grow. We had a lot of it's just has continued to grow. And I think also with that is a lot of people are becoming more
Mhm.
aware of why food is
Yeah.
so important, and why, I think before it was a lot of people just had in mind, I'm going to go get a meal for lunch. I'm not going to think about it. It's just food. And I want it to be inexpensive. But now people are understanding you get what you pay for. And we're certainly not making any more than most, actually, probably a lot less with our margins. But it's
Yeah.
it's expensive to cook with single origin olive oil, to cook with organic food and make everything from scratch, it's just expensive, you know? So,
That I would say I remember when you and your previous business partner split ways, and I thought she did an excellent job, but I have loved some of the changes because we're married to men that
mhm,
are similar. I'm married to a man's man,
mhm,
and he never really came into Nourish with me before because he had some things there that he was looking at that protein menu, and he didn't really just want beans and things like that, and so or add in powders, and so he has started, and the other, I guess 2 weeks ago, he went into Nourish when he was in Columbia without me. I wasn't in town with him. And I was like, oh my gosh, first of all, that's an evolution to your menu. And then second of all, it's an evolution to exactly what you're saying. Like he has started to pivot his thinking and understanding that like just any burger is not good for him. He had a pulmonary embolism earlier this
mhm,
year, and so even though health has always been something that matters to him and he's really physically fit and lifts heavy and all of that, he's changing the way he looks at food and food quality too. And so when he was like, "Oh yeah, I saw, one of your friends or whatever at Nourish," I was like, "You went to Nourish without me?" I am
it's
floored. And I just think
amazing.
that's a testament to the way you all are positioned in the market, and also just what you're saying, like society is opening their eyes to the importance of this. And I think this is going to happen more and more. And hopefully society demands it more and more.
Mhm. And I think there's something that's and I think you and I share this. I'm such a food lover. I love delicious food. I love traveling and exploring new restaurants, and I'm constantly inspired by different flavors. And so it's so important that healthy food, people don't associate it with flavorless or bland or dry or boring. And to really it should be pleasurable. Food is like one of those major pleasures in life. And not only should it be nourishing, but it should be so pleasurable to eat your food, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And that is, we entirely base our travel around food, and I love that. Like it's something that makes my
Same.
body feel good. It gives me energy. And so that's something that our family, and I love seeing, I've got a 13-year-old son. I know you've got two sons, and I love seeing him think about it too. Like this morning, he was getting ready for track practice, and I laid out a piece of sourdough that I'd made yesterday and then some bacon. And before he walked out the door, he's like, "I'm full and I'm proteined up." And like he's 13 and he knows that, like he knew that that was important versus,
Yeah.
grabbing a Pop Tart or a cereal bar or whatever. And he knows that like he's fueled properly for practice. And the funny thing is, one, his body knows that, but two, mentally, he's like, "I'm ready to go because I ate the right food and now I'm strong enough and I'm powerful and I have everything
100%.
I need." And that impacts you mentally as well, even though yes, your body
Mhm.
feels it. Like mentally, when you honor your body that way, it's amazing what that does to your brain. Like, oh, I'm going to have an awesome day because I've
For
taken
sure.
such good care of myself.
Yep.
Yeah.
So even for my 10-year-old, he knows, I think this is basic, if even adults to know this, to be able to look at a plate and say, where is my protein? Where is my carb? Where is my fat? And for a 10-year-old to know that, most adults don't even know that, to look at their meals and say, do I have those three basic things? And guess how long that lesson is for him? It took like 15 minutes to explain that to him. We did talk a little bit about why, it's not hard, you know, and it makes, just as you were explaining, all the difference in the world and the way it empowers them mentally and then of course physically, especially when you have active kids. But not even active. All kids should be active, you know, even if it's at their school recess.
Yes. Yes. And I would say like a lot of like fitness gurus and things like that, when they start talking about, because you're talking about macros right now, right? But like when you start saying, "I'm counting macros," and you put it in a place where it's hard to consume for the average person, and it feels scary and it feels like another thing they're going to have to add to their day. And they're just like, "I can't. That's too hard." But just the way you described
Mm-hmm.
it, I literally wish everyone would talk like they're talking to your 10-year-old. Because if we could talk to
Yeah.
everyone that way, just like in my business, I can't go jumping off the deep end about complicated HR concepts and expect a business owner to get excited about that because it sounds too complicated. And, above and beyond them running their business, they don't want to deal with it. It's the same way when we're talking about nutrition. When we make it overly complicated, then people are just like, well, that's not for me. I don't get it. I'm not going to understand. It's too much. I've got too much going on in my life. And so I love that you essentially just broke down macros without saying like, we're paying attention to macros. And because immediately people are like, what are the numbers? And then when you have to start counting things, do I need an app for that? And what happens when I travel, or, all those questions, and it just shuts people down before they can start, which is a real bummer because like amazing life is on the other side of this level of health.
And even what you were saying earlier about going into your schedule or like all the things you take and all the things your morning routine, I think that is where we have so much information, which is a beautiful thing. However, 95% of people, if you just start with the very basics, it will transform your life. So before you're questioning what supplements you need to take, are you sleeping well? Are you eating real foods? Are you hydrating properly with clean water? Are you getting outside and moving your body every day? Just that will change your life before you think about how many grams of such and such, or do I sauna or do I cold plunge, just that starting there. And I think it's like, maybe because it's so simple, it's boring for people or it doesn't feel like they're doing enough. But that right there is 90% of our health. All the other stuff is just extra.
Yeah. And when you start doing those things, I feel like that's really truly when I was like, oh, what else? You know what I mean? Like I started doing those things. I started feeling better. I started seeing the results of it. And then I was like, what else? And, just while we're talking, like I'm eating my little, if you're watching on YouTube, I have these adorable little plates. I have my mom's China collection, which was literally from a small town grocery store. You got like one piece every time you spend a certain amount. It's not fancy. Anyway, I put all my supplements on there. And then usually during my first call of the day, I just take all of my supplements then. And that's because I spend my morning drinking my colostrum and, doing some other things. And so it's not hard for me. Part of my morning routine is like collecting all my supplements, putting in this cute little plate, taking it to my desk with me. And then when you're sitting, because I work remotely, I'm sitting on my first call. It's easy for me just to sit. It's almost like taking like a little snack. It's occupying me. I've got not a neurotypical brain. And so I love the like little fidget of it all. And I'll be done with all of my supplements by the time we get off this podcast episode. And then I'm on to my day. And so there's ways to like work it into where it doesn't have to seem like, oh, I'm spending 30 minutes standing in the kitchen, taking all of my supplements. But I did have to laugh because you got me started on this Magic Mind. And I buy it by the case now. I love it so much. And it actually sponsors this show, but I love all of this. And it's like learning from other people and just giving it a shot. And if it doesn't work for you, then try something else. Like life is just this smorgasbord of information and options. And so whatever works for me and whatever works for you might not work for other people, but like find what works. Don't just like throw it all away.
Right.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, I want to jump into some superfoods because people do want the hack. We're talking about like the long-term choices that we make to make an impact, but people do love like, what are those powerful things that I could do? And so what are some of the overlooked but powerful superfoods or ingredients that you think people should be consuming more that maybe they aren't aware of or they don't know about?
I think, okay, so let's start with the kind of basic one, but hugely transformed the way I felt. And I think this also depends on your body as well, is adding minerals to your water. And I have, like, when people ask me what minerals I take, I almost get embarrassed because I don't take all of them all at once. I have like a little apothecary essentially down there, and I use them all at different times. But hydration first thing in the morning and adding minerals to your water will change your energy levels. It helps everything. I do so many different types. Ion Biome is one of my favorite things that I own, and I give it to me. I take it and I also give it to my family. And that is so it can act as a mineral, but it's also amazing for helping to seal the gut lining. It's just for gut health. And it's not like a probiotic, but it's adding those, it's like essentially soil into your body. I love LMNT just because it's so freaking good. The ingredients are not perfect, but I just love it. It tastes good. It makes me feel good. Quinton minerals are another one I take. I also take Shilajit. It doesn't taste good, but I add that to my water like once a day. I did it this morning. Sometimes if you just want to start before buying anything, just plain high quality sea salt. My favorite brand is Crucial 4, and I'm not like affiliated with any of these or sponsored by any means. These are just things that I love. So I think minerals, I think from there, it really, really, really depends on your focus. So, for instance, my husband, he has heart disease in his family. He's also really high strung. So, I give him like ashwagandha, black seed oil, reishi. So, reishi and ashwagandha for stress. And then black seed oil is really good for the heart. And then he has a red powder with beets that are like vasodilating. So I give that for him in the mornings before his workout instead of coffee. Because coffee, first thing in the morning, before you've eaten, is like a cortisol spike. And that's the last thing he needs. He already has enough cortisol. So him to push off coffee is a great thing. For me, I do a lot of hormone supporting things. So I love eating broccoli sprouts. And those are really, really good for helping the body metabolize excess estrogen. They're also very liver supporting, which that's what your liver is doing, is metabolizing the excess hormones. I love cilantro because it's a heavy metal chelator. And I love, let's see what else. For maca, I add to my morning drink. Collagen, so maca for hormones, collagen just in general for hair, gut, skin, nails, all the things, just more as like a beauty thing. What else? A lot of herbs for hormones too, like chaste berry, and I do a lot of liver supporting hormones just because liver supporting herbs because your hormones are metabolized through your liver. And if your liver's not clear, it's hard to, and honestly, our livers are just inundated we just have toxins everywhere. So even if you have like a really clean lifestyle, you go out into the world or stay in a hotel or whatever, travel, our livers can be overburdened. So taking a lot of liver supporting herbs, glutathione, high levels of vitamin C. So I take high levels of vitamin C. I just read The Cancer Revolution. It's a really, really great book, but it's about preventing and helping with cancer for someone that's already been diagnosed. And she recommends taking high dose of vitamin C just as preventative. And then, of course, if you had cancer as well, but not giving cancer recommendations. This is in her book.
Oh, I love that. I love hearing all of that. And one of the things that I've read is that if you overdose on I'm overdose in quotes here, on a mineral or on a supplement, it passes through your body and just comes out through your urine. So in general, it's not going to cause damage. Now, that's not medical advice, but is that something that you've heard as well?
Yeah, except for certain fat. So there's water soluble and certain fat soluble supplements. So like for instance, I want to say vitamin A, I believe you can overdose on, but the rest of them, like B vitamins, you they're you could pass them. But I think there could be a toxicity effect with too high levels of Bs as well. But mostly A. I think B is not as much of a concern. Vitamin C, it's what they call a vitamin C flush. So you would know if you take too much, it would literally be a flush. But yeah, most of them, I mean, but to get to those levels you just want to be careful with like the fat soluble vitamins versus water soluble. And you could look those up, which ones are which, if you had a concern about, which ones could potentially be toxic, have a toxicity level based on dose.
And that's why I wanted to bring that up, because I think a lot of people, give advice saying like, go and get all of your panels taken to learn what your deficiencies are. And I would also agree with that. At the same time, that means that some people just will never supplement because they haven't had those levels drawn. And so, I just think there's a balance between, yes, the information is really helpful. So if you can go to a holistic doctor or naturopath and something along those lines and get all of your levels drawn, I think that's really helpful. But if you can't, that doesn't mean don't try any supplements. Like just do your research and listen to your body. But just like you were talking about at the beginning, if you're not doing those free basics, then if you're thinking, well, I must need these things because this is what's showing up in my body. First, get your rest. First, get your movement. First, drink your water, and, structured water is best and all of this stuff. Because if you're basing your needs on an unhealthy body that doesn't have the basics, then you're like skewing what you feel like your body might need. So I don't want to overcomplicate it, but I also want to make sure that people understand like there are tests that you can do to learn specifically what your body needs, but also start with that baseline. And then you'll have a much better understanding about what maybe some of your deficiencies are and what some of your needs could be. Just wanted to like throw that out there as a disclaimer before anybody comes and comments on this episode and hates on us.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that is, like I have MTHFR. So when I started doing all of the tests, because they really started looking at, so once she did when I had, at the beginning when didn't have my periods and I was seeing a naturopath, functional medicine doctor, and they kept passing me on because they couldn't figure out what was going on because I had changed my diet. I had changed all these things. One of the things they test for is MTHFR. And this was earlier on. This wasn't the issue, but probably a contributing factor. And I had MTHFR, which means you don't methylate very well. Sometimes, depending on if it's heterozygous, homozygous, we don't need to go into there, like the severity of it. But when I first started taking methylated B vitamins, actually, she first had me take liver capsules, and it was like the lights turned on. It felt so huge to me, like that difference and shift in energy. And then also, I started taking methylated B vitamins as well, liposomal, all the things, very highly absorbable. And that was just it was huge. I think it's like 30% of the population has MTHFR, I believe, which also just means your detox pathways are compromised.
I'm sure there's so many people listening that are like, oh, how do you even find out? So how was that, through testing, or how did you find out that that was the case for you?
Yeah, testing. And so I did a lot of different tests during this time to try to get to the root cause of what was going on. And that was one of the first tests they ran.
Okay. So let's talk about some other wellness practices. I know you've talked about, you just kind of mentioned sauna and a few different things when we were throwing out routines. What are some of your, between like breath work, energy healing, that kind of stuff? What are some of the other things that you have implemented in your life that have made a big impact on you?
Oh man, because it is like I feel how you feel when you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much. I would say the things that I love the most and are kind of non-negotiables for me, meditation has to be the first one. And I think that changes. I think we're going to see more and more about how our nervous systems are just crucial. We have gotten so in that I've been like, I'm one of those people that like, I'm addicted to what I considered energy. I've learned was just a stress response, but I thought I just had a lot of energy. And calming the mind, expanding your heart, being able to listen, connecting to God, whatever it is you want to call it. For me, I say God, but spending that time to connect with yourself and God and quiet and calm the nervous system. It changes the way you experience your life. It changes the way you experience other people. So if I could say the first thing, that would be it. Second would be, let's see, I think movement, getting outside, movement, walking outside. I think sweating is huge, especially if you do have like MTHFR. So I love to sauna. And this is where I really have it stacked. So right before the sauna, I'll dry brush. I will do a castor liver oil pack. I'll put it on when I go in there. I take a binder. And we want those detox pathways open. We want to make sure things are moving. So our lymphatic system is moving because we're walking or we're dry brushing or we're doing a vibe plate. we're sweating, so we're pushing out the toxins through our sweat. Obviously, making sure you're going to the bathroom. I think that's not something that's talked about enough, but like all of those have to be open because otherwise the toxins can be reabsorbed and there's not like this clear pathway. I actually had my boys do a detox bath last night, and because I don't do anything hard with them, that has to be gentle. But there's a product I love from Taylor Duke's Wellness, and it's a more intense bath detox. When I say more intense, I mean more than just like Epsom salts. And then I let them watch, we just don't do a lot of media or shows and iPads and stuff. So I let them watch something just to keep them in there for 20 minutes. And it's just, supporting the body's detox pathways are so important. It's so important.
Yeah. I've actually started doing a little experimenting with a well-known controversial product that got really popular during the pandemic. And a lot of people, got a lot of flack for saying that they were trying this parasitic product and, whether it was for humans or other animals or whatever. And I've done a little experimenting with it recently and have seen really amazing results and kind of some wild results too. Like my dreams have changed and my energy levels have changed. But coming, you're talking about detoxing. It was just making me think about, I've just been, trying this product out for 3 days at a time and then doing that once a week for 3 days and giving that a little shot. But I just think for me, I am pretty open to trying some unique and maybe controversial things. I know not everyone is, but finding out where your threshold level is and then finding where you can find good research online or otherwise and giving it a shot. I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm not trying to give medical advice, but learning the impacts on your body, and the more in tune you are with your body, the more you can see things, like what the impact is on those. As soon as I tried that, my second night, I was like, my dreams are bananas and I am awake because I was also doing it around a full moon cycle. And so I was like, stuff's moving in my body and I need to make sure that I keep it moving all the way out. But it was just mind blowing to me. And so many of us don't want to talk about detoxification or the fact that, we have parasites or any of that kind of stuff. But it just seems in my house, at least, like my boys aren't surprised when I, start talking about any of that. Or my nephew came over the other day and was like, oh, I've been so stopped up. And I'm like, okay, try this and, take a little bit home with you and just don't tell your dad, because my brother would completely make fun of me, but I'm just that person in my family. And most of them are pretty open, like when my parents are over at night, I give everyone magnesium before they leave. And my dad, who is a stoic, old farmer, my mom's like, oh, he'll never take that. But when he's walking out the door and I'm like, hey, take your magnesium so you sleep good tonight, he kind of grumbles and then laughs and takes it. And so I just think, like giving it a shot and seeing how it'll work. I love seeing my parents kind of be open to that. And, my dad, I got him on LMNT, and when he was on chemo for a little while, I was like, you need to take your LMNT. And he would joke around with me, but he would do it. And so when we feel like we're making those, like honoring those commitments to ourselves for taking care of our body, I just feel like there's a lot of positive energy that comes around all of that. So I love that you shared some of your uniqueness, and hopefully there's some things that resonated with people that they could, try, even if it's just an Epsom salt bath, like you were mentioning, you do that with your sons. It doesn't have to be an elevated one. It literally can just be Epsom salts, but like doing some things that honor the body and just see how it feels. Sometimes it just feels good to know that we're trying to do things that are good for ourselves.
And I think creating speaking of the Epsom salt baths, like and at night, you can create this whole environment that supports it. So for instance, after dinner, we kind of start to dim the lights. We put on 528 hertz. I do theta brainwaves if I'm like reading or whatever, but 528 hertz on our Spotify that plays throughout the house. The lights are dim. We're kind of doing this. It's a ritual. We take our magnesium, we do all this. It's just our normal essential oils, And to me, that just seems so basic. Like to me, the more fringe thing, like I do coffee enemas and I do liver flushes and I do parasite cleanse. Like those feel like more fringe where I think most people are like, what in the hell is she doing? But those taking your magnesium, taking Epsom salt baths, that should just be, you don't want to say just a given, but it kind of should. Like these are all practices to support the biology, to support we only have one body. And if you don't feel good, not only does it affect you, but it affects your capacity to show up in this world, to show up for your people and to experience your level or your life at a different level. Because I mean, think about when you get, because we're used to feeling really great every day. And when you get sick or you do have something that happens, you're like, oh my gosh, like I can't even imagine what it would be like to not feel vibrant every day because you kind
Mhm.
of get used to it, you know?
Yeah. When my husband had that pulmonary embolism, which by the way, they ended up saying we went through a ton of genetic testing. Everything came back great. He doesn't have any genetic predisposition. And so what they've landed on, it was likely due, we are not vaccinated. So it's likely due to having COVID infections that's been
Hmm.
causing clotting and has been known to cause clotting, even though it's not being talked about. But the PE diagnosis in younger individuals has skyrocketed since COVID came on the scene. It's higher in vaccinated individuals, but still high in just individuals that have had the infection and just bananas. But when we went through that whole process, I said over and over again, when they would be like, you know, every time a doctor would change rotation, they would start asking, like, what's the amount of alcohol, inactivity, blah, blah, blah. And I would find myself just standing up and being like, we take such good care of ourselves. We are more active than we ever have been. We are more conscious than we've ever been. And so this is so frustrating to us. And, you know, I'm not saying that that means we'll never have any hardships in our life, but I had to kind of go through some emotional like resettling during that process because I kept thinking, what have we done? What has happened? Like, and anytime I think if you're a person who's really, really conscious on the health side and then you get some sniffles, it's hard not to be like, have I not rested? Am I dysregulated? Oh, I ate some
Hmm.
Doritos. Like, it's just like I take such good care of
Totally.
myself. And then it's like, also, we live in this world that is full of
Hmm.
toxins, just even in the air. And so things are going to happen. This just puts us on a better path for healing. And one of the doctors, when we were going through all of that, and my husband was in the hospital, he said, one of the best things for you to know is because of your lifestyle, he will bounce back from this. And so, we had a few friends that were like, gosh, you guys take such great care of yourself. If this can happen to anybody, then why spend all of your time, money, whatever on healthy lifestyles? And it's like, well, if you don't, and life happens like this, your ability to recover is so much lower. I mean, the
Hmm.
odds getting a PE at 46 and it was headed up to his heart, the odds of him making it those first 48 hours were slim. And he was able to pull through it. And they shared with us that, like, if he had been less healthy, he likely would not have made it through that time period. And
Hmm.
so it's motivational, but also just like level setting and a realistic mindset. We're still going to get sick, like stuff's still going to happen. And this work helps you to heal through the earth that we're living in.
Totally. Well, and not only that, but the way he feels on a day-to-day basis. And then if something were to happen, you're able to recover easier. And something for me that really hit was our lifespan versus our health span. And you see so many people with the last 20, 30 years of their life, they're not, they're not out on hikes. They're not doing, it's like they age so much quicker. And when the healthier you are younger, that it makes so it's not even so much about increasing your lifespan, which obviously it does, but we want to increase our health span where we're able to do the things we want to do and love to do for longer. And then the time that we're old and, not able to do is it become that window shortens. And for me, that is a huge motivator because, when you do love to do and be physically active and do all those things, you don't want to be sick and not able to move around and, all the things.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And it speaks to like when my husband found out he had this PE, because he's so much more in tune with his body. I mean, he was like, hey, something's not right. Something's not right. And he immediately knew,
Mhm.
because he usually feels really good and
Wow.
really strong and has a high lung
Mhm.
capacity and all of that. And he was able to be like, my breath's not right. Something's not right. And he literally said that morning, hey, I had a pain in my leg a couple of weeks ago, and I just realized I think it was a blood clot and I think it traveled to my lung. And I kid you not, this is what he said to me the morning before we
Wow.
went to the ER. And I was like,
Wow.
why would
Incredible.
you think that? And I mean, I was kind of joking with him because I was like, why would you think that? And he was like, because
Yeah.
that's what I think. That's what I think, Kerri. And I was like, okay. And you know what? It wasn't 7 hours later, we were in the ER
Sure
and they were
enough.
like, you have a blood clot in your lung. And because he knew like his legs usually feel good and strong, and he had had this like odd pain, and then the pain left. And now his chest feels tight, and he was just starting to put it together. And I feel so grateful that he was that connected in his body, that he was able to recognize like what it could have been, because that likely, the timing of
Mhm.
it likely saved his life. So yeah, I think overall all of these things like help just connect us to who we are and our, our physical body. And I think that's really important. So I love hearing all of your unique ways that you all do that. So if there's something that somebody could change, just one thing, you talked about those basics as far as like movement, your water, sunlight. If you were going to inspire somebody to do one thing today, what's the one thing that you were like, I challenge you to do this?
Oh man, because the of those basics, I'm trying to think. Okay, I would say to invest in a water filter and drink clean water with minerals. I would say that one first because it's hard. I mean, they're all equally important, real unprocessed food as much as possible. Sleep hygiene, so wildly important. And this is another example of you know, where how far you can take it. I've built this sleep little sanctuary. It's, I have this 8 sleep bed, that controls the temperature, that adjusts to your luteal phase, to if you drink alcohol, it will bring the temperature down. I have this infrared weighted blanket that is EMF blocking. I've got a silk pillowcase. I have a red light in my lamp, a humidifier, an air doctor in our room that cleans the air. I mean, it is a whole scene in there and essential oils going, but it's built over time, and it's, like you do, I think too, legs up the wall before you go to bed. And that's another like super simple, easy tip. The most effective things are the free things or minimally expensive. All these things we've added over time are because we had these foundations in place. But I think
Yeah.
investing in a water filter is probably where I would start. And you can, like one of my kitchen managers found one on a Berkey on Facebook Marketplace. You don't have to get this whole house water filter. You can start with something very inexpensive that is majorly effective, to not have have clean water that we should all have. And then adding a little pinch of
Yeah.
sea salt, very inexpensive, but proper hydration. Also, having your clean water and drinking 16 ounces at least first thing when you wake up before you have any caffeine, because our bodies detox at night, and so you want to push it through. We wake up dehydrated, so you want to replenish you know our hydration.
So when you're talking about good water, specifically, are you talking about adding a reverse osmosis system, or, give the folks a little bit more details about that?
So yes, so the Berkey water filter, a reverse osmosis system, and then or you could purchase like spring water. You could do that, would be getting a little bit more expensive, but I would say just even if you could do like a Berkey or a reverse osmosis water filter for your sink. I also really recommend doing a whole house water filter if you are able. You can move with it too, so it doesn't stay with the house, but you inhale as you bathe, you inhale a lot of the chlorine and a lot of the chemicals that are in the water. But yeah, once again, this is like where you can take by step of let's get a Berkey water filter and add a little pinch of sea salt. Or you can take it how I go, and I've got the whole house water filter. I structure my water after I pour it in a cup. I put my minerals and I say a little prayer. over it. So there's totally different levels of where how far you can take these things, you know.
Yes.
There's
Yeah.
you could get into water of like the yeah, I think once you start to learn about the structure and memory of water, there's books on this. It's so wild, and it's more than just like our physical health, but the energetics of how it interacts with our bodies as well.
I read some research the other day on the memory of water, and blew it blew my mind.
Hmm.
If
Yeah.
if you're listening to this and you do not know what we're talking about, Google it, get it on your FYP on TikTok, whatever it is, and you will start to go down a rabbit hole that you will not be able to recover from. I mean, it is amazing when you start learning about water and its ability. Just as a little preview, I'll say it could mimic the shape of someone's face. So water has memory, and that's something you should go research. But we did what I think a lot of people would find to be unrealistic. But when we lived in Colombia, we had an RO system in our house. But then when we moved out to the farm, we put in another RO system, but we also decided to go well water. And I know that's something that, is a tough choice to make because that means you may be on limited supply, even though we've lived here for a couple of years and we've only had one time where things got murky. And that's because we made a poor choice in running our water outside to our pool. So I was so excited when we were able to like pull water from the ground. And I know we all like know that's a possibility, but when you're actually doing that and then thinking about where your source is coming from, I I love like standing on the earth and thinking that there is water underneath us, and that is where we're pulling water up from the ground, and I'm washing my body with that. I'm, using it for everything in my house, washing my clothes and all of that because we don't have any chlorine in our water. We've had it all tested and learned all about it and what the makeup of it is. And I know that's not realistic for everyone. But again, like the more you know, the more you kind of like drop down into this world of wanting to, over time, make all of these changes because you see the way it all interrelates to your body.
Hmm.
So interesting. Okay, so before we get off of here, any closing thoughts, and then also let people know where they can find you, where they can follow you, where they can find and follow your business.
And another huge what just this when you talk about chlorine, something that else came to my mind is ex no, anybody. I think I was gonna say, especially if you're dealing with hormones or have cancer in your family or hormone issues or have cancer in your family, getting rid of as many toxins as you can in your home and using non-toxic cleaners, non-toxic laundry, getting rid of fragrances. There's so many amazing products out there now. Like I mean, 20 or 30 years ago, this was a different story. 20 years ago, this was a different story to try to find, but there's incredibly effective non-toxic products and candles, not burning candles with fragrance, the products that we put onto our body and just subbing those out. And I love products, with personal care products. So if anyone has questions, I could, share the things that I love. I don't have like any affiliation with any of them, but yeah, I think that's huge. Opening your windows for 10 minutes every day if you don't have air filters. There's always like steps to things. I know air filters are really expensive. The air doctors are really expensive. We have them now. We started with one. Now we have one in every one of our bedrooms and then in the main rooms. If you can't afford that, open your windows for 10 minutes every day. Let the air circulate and get fresh air in. Of course, if it's nice, keep them open as long as possible. But even if in the winter we pop ours open 10 minutes every day, maybe not that like 0 degree day, but you know what I mean? That was really cold this winter. But yeah, I think being aware of the toxins in our home and how much that affects our health. So
Okay, so that leads me to this question. Will you ever, I know Nourish is around food, will you ever add products that are like body care or any of that to your little marketplace?
I know at times when it doesn't feel so overwhelming, when I'm just feeling inspired, I picture like expanding Nourish and making the market side better, or I'm sorry, not better, because I love what we have in there, bigger
Yeah.
and more expansive. But I mean, you know how tiny that space is. We just have a tiny space, and we've made the market as big as possible. But yeah, I would love to do that because I love that. That's my favorite part of Nourish is the market part of it. It's so fun for me because it's so easy, and those are all products I use and the products that I love. And when you have something like that and you can bring it to a place that's an extension of you and have other people try these things and be like, oh my gosh, I noticed such a difference with taking this. It's so fun to me, and it just feels really good.
Yeah, that's how I found out about Symbiotica. There's just so many products that I have known to, like granola butter, like I could just go on and on. The olive oil that we use now, like there's been so many
Yeah.
products that have been Ion Biome. I use that too. So many products that you've introduced to me through sitting on the shelves at Nourish. And so I just love that. So I'm always interested. Like if I'll be there for it if you start adding a little area for self-care. But I know what you mean. The space is tight and you have it well stocked now
Hmm.
with really cool things. But yeah, so if someone's trying to find Nourish, where is it located?
So we are downtown Columbia. We're right next to the Broadway Hotel. So we're right on Broadway. We have a little patio, which is amazing to have a patio downtown. Just kind of also symbolizes of like eating outside in the fresh air under the sun. It's just the whole setting. So
Yeah. And where are you all on? Are you on social media? What's your website? That good stuff.
yeah, so Nourish Cafe Market is our Instagram, and that's also our website is nourishcafemarket.com. And just so for people to know, everything at Nourish is free. So it's organic, and we source from 30-ish local farmers and vendors. There's no preservatives. We're free of gluten, no soy, no corn, no refined sugars, no preservatives, no inflammatory industrial seed oils. We only cook with organic avocado oil or single origin olive oil. We only use eco-friendly takeout containers, and we compost all of our food waste. Well, we pay to have it composted. We collect it and then we pay Bluebird composting. So the environment is obviously a very huge of major importance to us and minimizing our impact as much as possible. And we only serve filtered water at Nourish too. I say we only serve filtered water at Nourish as well, because if I eat there, it has to be an extension of, it has to be just as healthy as I would eat at home. If I'm not going to, I will never serve anything at Nourish that I would not serve in my home. And you hear how extreme I am. So
No, I love that. And you mentioned how many things it's free of, but I wanted to say whether it's the Broadway Bowl or the Solstice salad, which will be off the market or off the menu soon, or whatever it is full on flavor still. And it always inspires me and reminds me that like we can cook in whole food ways and still have extremely, extremely flavorful food. And so if that's something that you're
Mhm.
like, oh, I don't know how to cook like that, I would recommend you stop at Nourish and give one of their dishes a try, and it will inspire you and remind you of how delicious that whole food cooking can be. And so I love that. I love what you bring to the table, and so glad that you were able to make time for the podcast today. Folks, we know that adding one more thing to your life can feel like chaos, and sometimes we don't know where to start, but we hope that this episode today has inspired you to add something. And maybe Kaylee and I sound a little off our rockers or far down the path, but I promise you, once you start to see and feel how this can impact your body and your family and your health and your productivity, you will see that the work is worth it. So don't waste the chaos, embrace it.